Morning, everyone. Seconds so that we can give people time to join before we kick off. I think we're going to be a bit lighter on the ground today anyway. I expect most people are on lots of people are on holiday, so we might be a little bit lighter than we'd usually be, but we'll just give it another minute and then I will start the session and then hand over to today's presenters. Right, let's get started. I think we've got probably most people that are joining, and I'm sure there'll be a few stragglers, but they can always watch back at the beginning. So welcome everybody to this month's Lunch and Learn. We are joined by a nice group of people today, so I'll hand you over in a second, but just doing the usual housekeeping. So we've already started recording, so just recording has started. So if you aren't comfortable with being recorded, then we would ask that you leave the session and you'll be able to watch it back. It will be available on the Working Mortgages website at some point later in the week. However, as long as you're happy to stay, if you can remain on mute and off camera, that would be great so that we can leave it to the presenters. And yeah, I'm going to hand over, I believe, to Matt, who's going to start the session for you today.
That's right. Thank you very much, Gemma. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for dialing in today. Conscious it's school holidays, so numbers are a little bit down, but I think you've got, a really nice session lined up, which is all about the next generation and kind of their attitudes to working in finance, but also more broadly to sort of home ownership. So on the call, we've got myself and we've got Beth as well from Landbay. I'll let Beth introduce herself in a minute. We've also got a brilliant panel of graduates that are just going to sort of have a bit of a panel discussion around their view of the world when it's sort of entering the work market. It's, attitude to sort of owning property and where that sits in their life plan, and also just their experience of sort of, engaging with the mortgage market more generally and how they might approach that. So in a sort of digital first kind of sense. So I know, Beth, we've got a couple of slides, haven't we, really, just to position the session. So I don't know if...
Can you see them?
Can I see them? Yes, I can.
Is it on key takeaways?
Well, hang on.
Yeah, we can see them.
Yeah, we've got them.
Lovely.
Okay.
So I'll just introduce myself quickly.
Yes, go for it.
So I'm Beth, National Account Manager at Landbay. And yeah, I was really passionate about this topic as somebody who started in the mortgage industry when I was 17. And I'm a really big advocate for this industry and getting young people in, keeping them in. And also, big advocate for kind of supporting young people in home ownership. And I've got a lot of friends who are that age who are buying their first properties. And it's really interesting to hear, hear their experiences. As somebody in the mortgage industry, I think we're always quite spoiled as to how much we know and how easy we find it to buy, or not easy, but we know all the terminology, we know what everything means, whereas if you're somebody who sits outside of our industry, it's like a complete minefield. So yeah, that's kind of why we chose this topic today. So Matt, do you want to sort of cover off the key takeaways and the contents of today?
Would you mind, Beth? For some reason, I can't see the slides.
That's fine.
If you're able just to follow though, yeah, thanks.
So the key takeaways today, so session exploring the 20 to 30 age group, which I am in for another 6 days because I turned 30 on Sunday. So I'm still technically a young person in mortgages. But about those challenges of accessing home ownership, attracting young people into our industry and retaining that young talent. And what we want to focus on today is some actual actionables. So we have got the We've got a little bit of an overview on some perceptions and opinions based on some questions that I've asked young people within Landbay and the business I work in. And then we've got a panel discussion with some graduates and somebody who works in the industry. And then we've got Making the Leap, which is a volunteering charity, which Dom is going to be talking about with his with Lucy. And that is kind of our call to action, and, you know, how can you make actual change. So I'll just sort of cover off the questions that I asked internally. So working in financial services. So these are some perceptions of our industry or perceptions that these young people had before they actually worked in it. So, you know, when they were applying for jobs and they were looking into what industry they wanted to work in. So, you know, hierarchical, relationship driven, male dominated, fast paced, need, you know, high-end qualifications in financial services, and obviously we all know what, you know, the sort of the truth of what our industry is. So it's interesting to hear these perceptions, because of course we want to change those and we want to make sure that the perception of our industry is positive. So what is an attractor for young people to working in this industry? So learning financial literacy. Obviously, I mentioned earlier that when you work in this industry, it feels the barrier to home ownership is much lower because you understand it a bit more. No need to have a degree. I don't have a degree. I literally finished my A-levels on Friday, started mortgages on the Monday. And it's you know, the mortgage industry is a good footstep into the financial services sector as a whole. And then all types of people are welcome. I mean, I've been involved with the sort of diff and diversity scene in the mortgage industry for a long time, and it's really nice to see how that's grown and how many different groups are represented and how much work is done within the sector. How do companies do better to attract young people into this industry? I think showing that young people are welcome. There is obviously this perception that it is quite an old industry, and that's definitely not the case. I mean, the first place I worked, I think I was one of the first places I worked, I was 22 and I wasn't the youngest by a long way. So, you know, there's definitely a place for young people here. Make entry-level roles more fulfilling, have clear progression paths and more advertisement. You know, I asked these young people, did you ever see, you know, jobs in this industry quite widely advertised? And not really. They're, you know, not as visible as perhaps they should be. One of the things that came up was about how they feel about the future of this industry, and the young people that I asked said that they were quite worried about AI replacing their jobs. I think that's something that we've all probably thought about in the last couple of years, but I had a really interesting conversation with my dad and actually Matt as well about, you know, as the whole of, you know, the business industry or, you know, the workplace has evolved since, you know, we had obviously emails came along, so therefore post streams weren't as necessary. You know, fax machines obviously went because emails, you know, there's so many different things, but it's not like all of a sudden there was a massive load of jobs that's just disappeared. A lot of those people or those roles capitulated into other things. So it's not like everything just suddenly goes away. There are new jobs that appear. And I think that's something that, although it's quite scary at the moment, there will always be a necessity for people to do something, and whether that is maintaining the AI models that exist. So yeah, it's something, a positive way to look at it, I suppose. So buying and renting and home ownership. So what is their perception of the rental market? So easier than buying for low earners, but expensive as a monthly payment, and not as secure as buying, which I'm sure we all understand why they have that perception. The biggest barriers for home ownership as well. So income multipliers, affordability when the rates are obviously really high at the moment compared to, you know, what they were sort of 5-6 years ago. Saving for a deposit whilst wanting to still enjoy your life is one that really resonated with me, because, you know, I feel like young people, there is such a social pressure to, you know, be out, be doing stuff, spending your money on things. And, you know, that we know that if you want to save money, you probably have to give up that stuff, but then you don't fit in with the social norms. So it obviously is difficult. And obviously cost of living makes that increasingly more difficult as well. So how do we change that narrative? So engaging with young people via volunteering, which obviously Dom is going to talk about in a little while. Getting involved with careers fairs. I mean, I've got friends who are teachers who are always saying, oh, you know, we need people to come and speak to the students about different careers. And like my whole friend group have gone and spoken at my friend's school about all the different jobs that we do. And I've also done one with Landbay as well, where we go and speak at schools. And so, yeah, just getting in touch with schools. I'm sure they'll happily have people come in and talk about it. Removing those barriers for entry. So, you know, if you have an entry level job, make sure that those requirements are realistic. I think a lot of young people, and probably more so young women, are less likely to apply for jobs unless they fit 100% of the job spec. So if it says, you know, 2 years sales experience is needed, but actually it probably isn't, because it's more of a personality fit, and we know this industry is very personality based, then of course if you make your job descriptions a bit more accessible, then, you know, you're kind of opening up to a wider range of people. And then in terms of home ownership, not putting the blame on them and using the old tropes of, oh, they buy avocado toast and they have a Starbucks every day, because that probably isn't actually the truth. You know, but, you know, enjoying your life by having that one nice coffee from Starbucks once a week, it is expensive and they probably aren't doing it every day. But it is, you know, just changing that narrative. And then having money conversations with children early on, as I'm sure everybody in this room probably will, because we work in the industry. But obviously we all have friends and family who aren't in the industry. So, you know, encourage those conversations, you know, or even have them with sort of your friends and nieces and nephews and whatnot. So now I'm going to pass over to our panel. So we've got Niamh Downey from West One, and we've got Laurianne Peter, who is a recent graduate from Nottingham University, and Raz, who is also a recent graduate from Nottingham University, and Matt is going to field that. So if you have any questions for the panel, please just put them in the chat box. I'll be moderating it, but I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so that the panelists can have their lovely big faces on the screen.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, no, and thank you, Niamh, Raz, and Laurianne for doing this today. We do really appreciate it. Nobody wants to hear from me on anything to do with next gen, so this is all about, you know, us learning from you. And I think what we'll do, the topic of conversation will kind of run through, you know, starting out in work, you know, and you're sort of entering the job market, where sort of home ownership fits in within your wider sort of life plans, your route to home ownership, whether that's digital first, at what point you would seek sort of mortgage brokers or TikTok or all that good stuff. And then also challenge for the industry, you'll have sort of lenders and brokers on this call, thinking about, you know, how as a broker would I engage better with the next generation, and also for lenders, do we need to reflect more on the types of mortgage features that we offer, so that they are more engaging for the next generation. But I think I was lucky enough to meet Raz and Laurianne at the university up in Nottingham, where they presented on a couple of bits and pieces related to financial services. And I think the themes that came from that were really just around that sometimes the system doesn't feel like it's working particularly well for the next generation. And there's a sense that perhaps the odds are stacked against them. Graduates are often leaving university now with sort of £60,000 to £70,000 worth of debt, entering a kind of an uncertain job market, and just a feeling more generally that the opportunities have perhaps reduced rather than enhanced compared to previous generations. So I thought it'd be really useful to just have that debate today and hear from some young people and get their view of the world. And I think we're all here just to listen, learn, and obviously have lunch as well. So that's just to sort of kick things off. So just to start then, if I come to you, Laurianne, when you think about sort of entering the job market for the first time, you know, what matters most when you're choosing an employer?
Hi. I think one of the things that matters most when choosing an employer is there going to be opportunities to progress within the company, so not just to build skills but also just to evolve, not just but to evolve as well. Also knowing that there'll also be work-life balance, because I mean that's important, because that's going to manifest in how you show up to work as well. Also having a realistic salary that's actually conducive to, you know, the cost of living that we're currently seeing now. So those are some of the factors for me. Also looking at the company culture as well, like what are the values that that company is advocating for, and to what extent does it uphold those values, and how it like it shows up to work and its colleagues show up to work. Yeah, those are like the first few things that I would look for.
Thanks, Laurianne. Sort of similar question for you, Raz, and just think about, you know, your route to the job market and what that looks like as well, whether it's, you know, how you seek opportunities or know what opportunities are out there.
For me, I would say one important thing would be having accessible contacts with, let's say, the leadership, such as like managers. Also, if there's any issues that are going on, you actually have somebody to speak to and not be like scared or something about obviously your position in the company and how it affects your relationship with other co-workers. And I would also say like obviously career progression, such as like a clear path. Say you're there for like, let's say 5 years, you can get moved onto a certain role, or let's say you hit certain milestones, you could be considered for like a certain position and things like that, I would say.
Okay, thanks, Raz.
Also,
Go on.
oh, sorry, I was going to say a quick thing to add. The recruitment process can determine a lot about how your employer is going to potentially treat you as well. So it's like when I'm applying and I'm going through the recruitment process, is there correspondence with me? I wouldn't say frequent, but is it consistent? Or it's like when scheduling an interview time, do they communicate with me in advance, or if they have to cancel or rearrange just that last minute? So I feel like how you get treated during the recruitment process is also for me an indication of how they're going to treat me if they were to be my employer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And in terms of seeking new opportunities, what's your, you know, it used to be the newspaper back in my day, but with yourselves, you know, how do you see which roles are out there, and you know, how do you navigate the job market, I guess is my question.
Who do you want to go first, me or Raz?
Go on, Laurianne, you
Okay.
go.
I think for me, I mean, there's the platforms for graduates, like you've got Grad Cracker, and then you've got Bright Network, where essentially companies will put their job postings, and then the graduate websites are used as a medium because then they get sent straight out to graduates. And what I find is that it can work, but it also feels like your CV kind of goes into this black hole with thousands and thousands of other CVs. So sometimes I find that whilst it can work, I think you easily get lost in the crowd. So what I've been doing now, which has somewhat helped me increase my visibility, is I've been trying to make the first step in having a conversation. So using LinkedIn and seeing, okay, who's been to my university, or who's currently in the career that I'd like to do, or who's built a career themselves when they were in my position, and then actually starting a conversation with them, telling them who I am, introducing myself, and asking them if they'd just be up for a chat in terms of how to get into their industry or how to get into that role. And I find that I've been making more progress with that than taking the standard route via online platforms. I also find that because there's this discourse now about how difficult the graduate job market is, people are more willing to help, and they're more willing to have that conversation because there's this awareness of how difficult it is. So for me, taking that first step and talking to people and trying to initiate conversation, I feel has been more helpful in getting my name out there than using the online platforms, even though I know they can be helpful, but it's really hard to stand out because you get lost in the pipeline with everyone else.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And Raz, do you want to come in on that point as well? And I'll move on to Niamh.
As for me, I'll totally agree with Laurianne's point. So for me, a lot of the ways how I found most of my jobs I've worked previously is by calling up certain places. So let's say I'll go and check the website, I'll find a number, I'll send out an email directly to the company, or I might show up to their office and try and speak to someone, because I find that's more helpful than actually just applying online and getting, like you said, lost in the CV black hole.
Yeah.
So that's my approach to look for jobs, really, mostly.
It's really interesting. And for you then, Niamh, you're in employment now in the mortgage industry, and how has it been for you in your career to date? And I guess another question would be, you know, what can we do more as an industry to sort of attract younger people, having heard from Raz and Laurianne?
Yeah, so I started my career within specialist finance over 10 years ago when I was 17. And I think one thing that we probably really have to consider, and a good bit of advice for younger people, I guess, is not worrying about having your whole career figured out at the beginning. I certainly didn't. I never grew up kind of thinking, do you know what I would really love to do is enter a career into the world of financial services. That wasn't my intention, but I found a good company and I was curious. And I think that's the main thing, is don't have your whole career figured out, but be curious, ask questions, work hard, and kind of be open to opportunities when they do come your way. In terms of attracting younger people to work in the industry, particularly from a lender perspective, I think there's such a vast array of jobs within our industry, just in kind of mortgages, that nobody would know about unless you work in the industry. And we need to do a better job of showing young people what careers actually exist within the industry and what they look like. I didn't know what a career in mortgages could look like even when I started my career. I thought it was very much pigeonholed, and there is such an array of jobs. We need to show what those variety of roles look like and what's available. I think visibility is obviously really important. We do a fantastic job of talking about getting young people in the industry, and we know that maybe we're lacking in that department, but we probably need more people to take the initiative and get out to careers fairs and schools and universities and show real examples of people who have joined the industry, whether they've gone to university or not, and how they've progressed within our industry. And then once they do join, it's about kind of giving them genuine development, genuine opportunities, and a clear idea of where their career could go. And I think if young people can see themselves within the industry and they can see what the potentials are, they're much more likely to be attracted towards that industry. And we need to do a little bit of a better job of that visibility and then backing up that with real development and opportunities once they join.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really well said. I think from just listening to Raz and Laurianne already, some of the things we could do as an industry feel quite straightforward, in that, you know, just acknowledging applications, actually being present and more personal with our contacts, not just do it through emails and HR departments. You know, just genuinely try and build a relationship with the young person so that they feel valued and heard and listened to. But is there anything final, Laurianne and Raz, you would raise to sort of starting out in work, and a few do's and don'ts perhaps for employers that which would be a no for you?
For me, I would say one thing I've noticed about obviously applying for jobs online is that a lot of the time they have like a long drawn out process with a lot of these tests and systems and a lot of stuff that obviously, if you're applying for a lot of grad jobs and you haven't got much time, then to do all these little tests and stuff that they put in front of your face, I don't think is really essential, and it doesn't really help you in terms of how you feel about the company, such as they just see you as like another figure to solve a system or something. It doesn't really make much sense to me because it doesn't really relate much to the job itself.
Yeah.
And obviously you have to also consider the time factor that other people have, because if I'm sitting down filling out 4-hour tests and whatnot, how many jobs I really apply for? So you have to obviously think about that as well. And I think mainly when it comes to speaking to people, I think the best thing to do is to have like a face-to-face interview and actually speak to them about topics on the industry itself, so you can have an idea of their actual personality rather than putting an irrelevant test in front of their face and saying solve this and we'll see how smart you are, kind of thing.
And the test has nothing to do with the job application or the industry itself. Like, I'll be choosing random pictures with squares and then the different shades, and it's like that does not showcase any of my potential at all. Psychometric tests, please, no. I just don't see how they're conducive to what I could do, you know, for you as a potential employee. And as Raz says, something that's been normalized, but it shouldn't be, is like 2-hour applications where I'm having to fill all of this like personal stuff about me which has nothing to do with the job as well. And yeah, applications aren't what they used to be.
That's so interesting. Thank you, Beth. We'll all take an action to scrap psychometric testing from our recruitment process. So done. Right. Is there anything in the chat, Beth, before I move on to sort of the next topic area? But I guess as we go through the conversation, do just chip in with any comments, particularly if you're an employer that might be doing something a bit different to attract and retain young people. It'd be great to sort of share that experience on here as well. So let's, fast forward slightly and say, you're into work and, everything's great. In terms of home ownership, where does that sit in your kind of wider life plan? Is it sort of the next 5-10 years, or is it somewhere just that, it's not even on the radar at the moment? So, Niamh, I'll come to you first on this one. You may even be a homeowner already. I don't know.
I'm not, to be fair, but
Okay.
I am probably a little bit older, so maybe a slightly different perspective, I guess. I think probably the industry is, or just home ownership in general is changing. I think it's very, very situational and it varies in terms of whether people even want to own a home anymore. I think some people consider renting gives you a little bit more flexibility that home ownership doesn't always give you, particularly when you're young and you're potentially still figuring out where you want to live and what your career opportunities look like. It's also incredibly difficult if you're on your own to save for a mortgage, and we always reference bank of mum and dad. That's not realistic for everybody. And I think we're kind of using that as a solution for young people now, and we're relying on bank of mum and dad, and you're excluding a very, very wide range of people from that. So for me in particular, listen, I'd like to own a home. I wouldn't force it just for the sake of saying I've got myself on the property ladder. I think the industry's changing slightly, and there's kind of pros and cons to both sides.
Thank you. And then for you, Laurianne, so where does it sit in your sort of life plan? And where does it sit, Laurianne?
If I'm being really honest, like from a aspirational, emotional angle, yeah, I would like to own a home. But if I'm being realistic, I don't see it happening for me anytime soon, especially as someone who's just, I mean, I know you said let's jump forward and you've got a great job and life's going great. There's still so many questions in terms of, okay, but what if I need to change job, or even if I do have a job, what if I can't afford that? Because another thing as well that our generation have is student loan repayments, which my parents' generation didn't have. University was free, and it does kind of lower your opportunity to save for a deposit. And also I find that the notion of owning a home, it's two-dimensional in the sense that you're either ready to buy or you're not. We don't talk about the in-between. It's like, are you ready or are you not? And it's like, well, I'm just trying to somewhat build a financial foundations, right? So I think it's hard for me to even picture myself owning a home anytime soon. I'd like to say it's aspirational, but I also feel like there is growing skepticism towards the banks and the financial institutions, and even, like, I'll be honest with you guys, the mortgage industry as well, because we don't see you guys face to face and we don't have chances to kind of deconstruct those perceptions. Like, before this, I hadn't had a conversation with people who worked in the mortgage industry, but if you look online, and would it be possible to share my screen? Because I actually prepared it for you guys to see.
That'd be great.
Kind of what's being said about your industry, so that you at least have an awareness of what's being said by financial advisors who have a massive platform online. bear with me. Choose cover window, allow. Oh, okay, that's your name. Okay, bear with me. So this is from Diary of a CEO. I'm sure you guys have all heard the huge podcast, and loads of his audience is actually Gen Z. But if you just look here, do not buy a house. Don't buy a house until you've watched this. Or what was the other one? The real reason that you should not buy a house. Don't buy a house. Do this instead. Buying a house makes you poorer than renting. This is kind of what's being said about like the mortgage industry. There was another one that was literally called the mortgage trap. So I think when, let's say, you know, I'm a young person, I can't really afford to speak to a mortgage advisor right now. I'm always going to try and find the way that's going to cost me the least money. And this is kind of what I'm seeing online for free. Like you've got one here that literally says the mortgage trap. It doesn't give me confidence to actually engage with the industry unless I was having these face-to-face discussions. But because my generation are looking for affordable ways to gain information, and that's the first thing you type, well, that's the first thing you see when you want to research mortgages and buying a house. Again, I can stop showing my screen now. It makes me think, okay, well, maybe renting is the best way for me going forward based on what these guys are telling me for free. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does.
So I'd love to own a home, but I do think, as Niamh said, it's situational, it's circumstantial, and also with the amount of geopolitical uncertainty, like I believe when the Iran conflict really broke out, interest rates for homeowners changed, because I know my dad had to sort it out, and that caused him like a whirlwind of anxiety. So yeah, I hope it answers the question.
It really does.
Emotionally, yes, I'd love to. Practically, I don't really see it happening for me anytime soon.
No, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's, you know, to see the information that you're faced with when you go online. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily lend itself, does it, to aspirational home ownership. So just in terms of, you know, route to home ownership, from an extension of the next question, of the previous question, really, which was and engaging earlier with advice. If you decided tomorrow that you wanted to understand whether you could buy a home, what would you do first? Raz, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah.
For me, the first thing I would do is I would speak to people who I know who've already had a mortgage and find out their experience of obviously having a mortgage and the whole process of it and which way they'd think would be the best way to approach it. And then on top of that as well, I'd also do like a Google search or like a Reddit search or let's say YouTube and try and find like a different perspective on the best way to approach it. And then for me, I'd see what makes sense to me and then approach it that way. And I'd also try to call up my local mortgage brokers and advisors and speak to them and see what their perspective is on it.
Okay. Laurianne?
Yeah, similar to Raz. I mean, I talk to my parents as well and find out what, you know, their experience was or how kind of working out the first steps that they did. I did also do an experiment where I asked ChatGPT. And that was quite interesting. I felt like the resources that it signposted me to were quite reputable and like decent. And yeah, I would use my personal network of people who already had mortgages. One thing that I do find though is when I do that, as Niamh mentioned, when I do ask my friends who have secured ownership, it's they openly admit that their parents helped them and the bank of mum and dad, but it's like, well, I don't really have that. So sometimes even asking them, it doesn't really help me because they used a resource, i.e. their parents, which I can't rely on. So I would use like online as well, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just to continue, Laurianne.
One more question. So we've got time for probably one more question, then we'll have to move on. So that's one.
Yep. Okay. So do we move on completely, Beth? We thank you for keeping us honest there on time. But yeah, it was more
If you want to wrap up, that's fine.
you know, in terms of seeking mortgage advice, what would make you do that, I guess, and what are some of the barriers that prevent you from perhaps seeking the advice of a mortgage broker, perhaps if you're still sort of 2 or 3 years away from buying?
So can I go first, just because I have thought
Yeah.
about this?
Yeah.
One of the things for me is literally the perception of a broker, because there is kind of a perception, if you're using the term broker, it's that their motive is to sell you something and get you committed. They're not really positioning themselves as partners who are on your side and actually want you to help secure realistic home ownership. So I think it is about the way that brokers not market, but how they emulate themselves into actually genuinely wanting to help you.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Like, I wish that they would position themselves more as partners instead of brokers. And that would make it more inviting for me to approach them first instead of looking to the internet for free.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point. And Raz, did you want to come in on that as well?
Another thing as well that I've noticed is that a lot of the time when I speak to people who go for mortgages, they always complain about the unnecessary hidden fees.
Yeah.
So I think that's another factor that comes into play, because let's say you're going into an interaction with someone and all of a sudden they start pulling out fees from here, there, and everywhere. Then it starts to make you think that you can't trust them as a person, because they said one thing, but then something else is coming up again and something else coming up again. So it has like I'd say like a mirage of like deceit or something like that. So you don't know if you're actually getting what you bargained for, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you both for sharing. And Niamh, I don't know if you want to just come in finally on just that point around sort of challenges for the industry, whether that's, you know, lenders, what we can do differently as well.
Yeah, I think I kind of said it a little bit earlier, but it sounds like, especially from your guys' perspective as well, we probably need to spend a lot more time on education, and we shouldn't really wait until someone is sitting down with a broker ready to buy a house before we explain how mortgages work. And if we want to help more young people become homeowners, we should be making the market feel less intimidating long before they get to that point. So probably a lot of work for us to do around education and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah,
that's been it. Thank you so much, Laurianne, Raz, and Niamh for being on the panel this morning. I've certainly taken a load from that, particularly even some of the terminology that we use, and the fact that broker might suggest, you know, someone's trying to sell something rather than actually help people. So I think that's a key one to take away. But I think definitely, you know, engage early with you, speak to you rather than sort of revert to kind of digital first, because we just make an assumption that perhaps that's the way that you like to operate. So thank you very much for that. We'll certainly summarize some of the things that you shared with us today to share it as well. But thank you. I'll pass back to you, Beth.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was super insightful. I think anybody who's on here will probably have a long list of things that will, you know, to think about after this. So I am now going to pass over to Dom and Lucy, who are going to talk about making the leap. So yeah, if you want to introduce yourselves, then over to you.
Great. Thank you, Beth. So my name is Dom Scott. I wear a few different hats, actually, all of them relevant, very relevant to this call today. So firstly, I'm the managing director of a financial services business which deals with mortgages, protection and financial planning. And I have to say that the panel there was excellent, and the points made, especially the screenshot you shared, really resonated with me. So we'll certainly go away and have a think about those messages. I also sit on the board of the Association of Mortgage Intermediaries. So I work with other mortgage leaders to help shape how the industry works for intermediaries, and certainly we need to do some work around how we promote ourselves off the back of the panel. I'm also the deputy chair of Working in Mortgages. So just to explain that, it's a cross-sector initiative between AMI and IMLA, the Intermediary Lender Association, where they've created working in mortgages in order to attract and retain talent within the mortgage sector, from all ages and from diverse range of groups. And then I'm also the trustee of a social mobility charity called Making the Leap. And where these roles intersect is improving how we make the mortgage sector attractive to young people. It's about providing financial education to younger people to help them to navigate their financial journeys. And then it's about us as mortgage leaders harnessing our experience to then upskill the next generation, irrespective of what their career path may be. It may not necessarily be within the mortgage sector, but we obviously have lots of transferable skills that can support them on their journeys. I speak to lots of people who are working in the mortgage sector, who are very passionate about being involved in these three areas. But the frustration is they're not quite sure how to get into it. So, more often than not, they're thinking about it, but they're not necessarily active. So what I hope to do on this call now for the next sort of 10, 15 minutes or so is just explain some of the work that I'm currently doing in partnership with Making the Leap. And hopefully it either inspires people to be more active themselves or be more proactive, or potentially they want to sort of join me in the work that I'm doing with Making the Leap and volunteer some of their time. Joining me on the call, I've got Lucy Pryce, who's a head of development at Making the Leap, who will sort of talk through her role in the programs and the impact this fantastic social mobility charity has. So why don't we start there, actually. Lucy, how are you? And please tell us more about yourself.
Thanks, Dom. Yeah, I'm well, thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me to join the discussion. And just to echo Dom, like just in terms of what a rich and honest discussion that was. So thank you for everything that you shared. So yes, as Dom said, I'm Lucy, Head of Development at Making the Leap. I have been with the charity for just over 21 years in various different roles. It was my first job out of university. I loved it so much I didn't leave. But we are a social mobility charity, and we exist to support young people from less advantaged backgrounds by developing their confidence, skills and outlook to succeed in the career of their choosing. We've been around since 1993, and our work is in London in terms of supporting young people directly. And we support young people at 3 key points. So from the ages of 11 to 25. So we support young people when they're in education, so going into schools and supporting them. We also support undergraduates as well. And then young people aged 18 to 25 who have completed their education, either school leavers or graduates, and are then thinking, what next? And we've all been there, right? So what an important time that is. Each year we work with over 5,000 young people right across London, and there's various programs and interventions that we deliver, but the key themes, I suppose, are around soft skills, employability, giving exposure to different careers and the professionals behind them and those entry points into various sectors and industries. But then also we act as the conduit really in terms of helping businesses connect with young people and helping young people have access to those entry-level roles like what was being discussed, and helping them understand how to navigate that and providing that tailored support to help them move forwards. And because young people don't technically roll off our programs, we have a really active alumni community of young adults that stay connected with us, and it's brilliant to be able to see them continue to flourish in their career, and they build that peer-to-peer network as well, but also help to keep us young and relevant, I think, because they feed into our work, so showing us sort of how we can continue to support young people based on what they might need. And currently 80% of the young adults who attend our flagship program progress into employment or training in line with their aims. And we all know what's happening in society at the moment with Alan Milburn's report, just how important that support is for young people. So that's our direct delivery, and a core part of that, I should say, is the work of businesses. So we partner with organisations that are committed to advancing social mobility, and that could be through opening their doors to invite young people in, offering work experience, internships, mentoring. So there's a whole variety of ways that we work with businesses, but a key part as well is sharing those entry-level roles that we have been discussed on this call with our young people. And it's of course life-changing for our young people to have access to those opportunities, but in turn it helps businesses because they are diversifying their intake then and really attracting talent that they otherwise might not. And then we continue to support those organisations to ensure that young people can flourish and become their, fulfill their potential. So those ongoing relationships, long-standing relationships with businesses, as well as supporting the young people. And in addition to our direct delivery in London, we also run national advocacy strands that are designed to champion and move the dial on social mobility. So most notably, that's the UK Social Mobility Awards that we run. We also run Social Mobility Day and publish the social mobility list. And those initiatives really are about recognising the fantastic work that businesses and educators are doing to advance social mobility and individuals in society to bring it into the mainstream, really. So that's sort of a flavour of our work at Making the Leap. Dom, you have volunteered firsthand with us as on many occasions. Would you like to share just how you've found that experience and the sort of things you've been involved in with us?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I think, whenever I finish a program, often, someone at Making the Leap sort of says, well done, and, thanks for your time. But if I'm honest, it's not entirely altruistic. I get a real sort of buzz from having done it. And it's quite an addictive buzz as well, sort of helping others, and not necessarily, not receiving payment for it. You're just doing it because it's the right thing to do. And you've got the ability to have a positive impact in somebody else's life. And I think that's often underrated. And again, when I'm speaking to people across the mortgage sector, they're often looking for that outlet alongside their day job. So if anyone, is that way inclined, it's a fantastic way to supplement the work you're doing on a day-to-day basis. The programs I'm involved in fall into sort of three broad areas, but I should add, all the heavy lifting around these areas are done by Making the Leap. It's actually quite a small amount of my time that's taken up in being involved in the program. So, for instance, the first one is called mock interview training, where typically a group of around 10 individuals like myself, so there'll be professionals from various sectors sort of come together and meet in the reception of a school that Making the Leap is partnered with. And that school will arrange for a whole year group. So it could be up to 200 young people. The ones I've been involved with were, one was year 11, another one was year 10. And you will sit down with a pupil for 20 minutes. And in that time, you're doing an interview. But then for the second 10 minutes, you're giving feedback on that interview. And for me, I just thought, it's a meeting, it's an interview, it's sort of not a big deal. It's only sort of, a mock interview. But then you realize for these young people, they may have been practicing for this for weeks or months. In a few instances, I had someone shaking ahead of me giving them the feedback. And when I gave the feedback, which was positive, and it always tends to be positive, I mean, you could just see the relief on their face, the amount of tension they'd built up. They'd never had somebody validate their ability before. And sometimes the feedback that you're giving, and it's always done in a way which is positive and empowering, could be as simple as, body language, it's the handshake, it's the eye contact, it's how people articulate themselves, so all things that you may take for granted being a professional in your sector for, the last 10, 12, 20 years. But for somebody who's young, doesn't necessarily have the parental support or the general pastoral support, your feedback becomes extremely profound. So that day, it will last anywhere between sort of 2 to 4 hours or so. It's organised by Making the Leap. You quite literally just turn up. You have young people put in front of you for sort of, 20-minute mock interviews. During that particular session, I'll probably see sort of 20 young people. So it's quite intense for that period of time. But again, once the day's done, it's a fantastic feeling that you've had an impact in the lives of young people. And then the other type of session that I tend to get involved with, and this can be for different age groups. In some instances, it may be for people who are on the Making the Leap course and could be sort of in their late teens. It could be for others who have passed through the course and may already be in work, but then they're sort of looping back into Making the Leap for further support in some capacity. So the various sessions I've been involved with is providing insights around public speaking, tackling imposter syndrome, and then giving my career journey insights. And in those sessions, we will, or Making the Leap will organise for, it's usually somewhere in the region of sort of 10 to 20, might even be 30 young people to come together in a space organised by Making the Leap. And in some instances, I've managed to organise a space. So we did one on the home buying process, where we used a meeting space organised by a nationwide building society. So again, you know, you might find that you've got first-hand experience in terms of something you're doing in your company or in your role that you can impart, or it could be on something a bit more generic around, you know, how to work with colleagues, or how to, you know, manage upwards in a workplace environment. You know, it could literally be anything which you deem as being relevant and useful to those audiences. And then the third type of session is financial education, and I think there's so much more work that needs to be done here. I've already alluded to the fact that we did a session with Making the Leap in Nationwide's offices. The one nugget I'll share from that session, and I'll sort of allude back to some of the points made on the panel earlier, I overheard two attendees talking ahead of the session I was about to host, and I don't think they realised I was the host, even though I look far older than everybody in the room. And one person said to the other, "I don't really know why I'm here. I kind of just sort of, you know, I'm never going to be able to buy a property, but I kind of decided to treat it as an academic exercise. Best to kind of know about it than not know about it." Once the session was done, the response from that person was, "Oh my gosh, I don't believe it. I think I can actually buy a property. I didn't realize I could partner up with one of my friends. I thought it would have to be a family member. And I didn't realize there are products out there that would allow me to do something a lot quicker than I realized." And I often find that people sometimes treat the prospect of buying a property similar to how they treat going to the gym. They don't necessarily think they should go to the gym to get fit. They think they should get fit, then go to the gym. It's like, no, you go to the gym to get fit. And it's the same with buying a property. If you don't know whether you can buy, that's exactly who a mortgage advisor should be speaking to. If you think you need to collect all the answers first and then speak to an advisor, then I think you're potentially excluding yourself from options and solutions which could be suitable for you. And if your first port of call is speaking to your friend who hasn't bought, then they don't necessarily have the information you need. But of course, speak to your parents. But if your parents bought 10, 15 years ago and it's not their day job, then they're not necessarily up to date with the products which are available. So it's really important you give yourself that opportunity to be exposed to the options that are available to you. And the other point that I heard is there's a choice between going to an advisor or going online, which is free. Speaking to an advisor should not cost you any money. For some advisors, when you submit an application, there may be a charge at that point. For others, there may be no charge. But speaking to an advisor, and you know, I'm going through the home buying process myself at the moment, and with my advisor, I've taken lots of his time and I've not paid a penny. I will only pay a penny as and when that application is submitted. So use the expertise, use the resources. And now you're sort of on this call and you're connected to a number of different people, you know, whoever that may be can signpost you to reputable options. So I've gone slightly off track there, but you know, the purpose of being involved in these programs is to I suppose, empower young people in a variety of ways, whether it's to give them the belief that having a successful career is something they should be aspiring towards, and how to navigate those opportunities. It might be financial education, it might be upskilling on various topics. But then the other benefit, which is a bit of a selfish one, is it isn't just about the recipients of your training. Doing these sessions is a great way for you to also feel a sense of empowerment and a sense of making a difference to the people around you, just making the world a better place, as cheesy as that sounds. There's real value in that for your own sense of self-worth and well-being. So Lucy, just sort of passing the conversation back to you, if people are inspired then to be involved in some capacity, typically if they were going to volunteer with Making the Leap, what would be the next steps? What's involved thereafter?
Thanks, Dom. I think just to echo everything you've said as well, that home ownership masterclass came about through engaging with our alumni, our young people, many of whom will be the first in their family to buy a home, wanted to demystify the whole subject and to understand what that looks like. So that was led through our young people speaking to us and then us approaching Dom, and he made it all happen for us. So we have a really established volunteer network at Making the Leap, over 500 people who kind of give their time each year. So I think for people who are interested in volunteering, you would be joining a really enthusiastic and brilliant community. Our volunteering opportunities generally take place during the working day, sometimes in the evenings. They can be online like this with a group of young people, or in person. And really, you don't need any previous experience of volunteering at all, and we welcome people from all different points in your career. I suppose, to chime with what Dom has said, really the most important thing is that you have a genuine interest in supporting young people who are starting out. That's really important. We do provide that training and briefing beforehand and organise all the activities, so to make it as seamless as possible for volunteers who are giving their time. And it could be taking part in a mock interview day, like Dom said, joining one of our virtual Dragon's Den style sessions, supporting our young people with their presentation skills and commercial awareness, hosting a group of young people at your offices, providing that exposure in terms of giving young people opportunities to come inside some of the buildings that they may have seen in the city or wherever, and actually just to understand what that looks like inside. And really importantly, behind all of these organisations are people like yourself that want to care, and that's really important as well, to give young people that time and exposure and insight into your own career journeys and how you ended up where you are. Just even what you shared, Beth, would be incredibly inspiring, I think, for young people starting out. So we try and make it as easy as possible, and there's a few simple steps. So we have, I suppose the first step would be to get in touch with myself. We could share my email address, and we have a chat with volunteers just to really understand your availability, what your interest might be. Some people are really passionate about going into schools, others prefer young adults, or both, so we can offer everything in between. We would then ask volunteers to undergo a DBS check through the disclosure and barring service, which is standard for most organisations that work with young people, which is a check to see for any criminal convictions. The cost of this is £25 to the volunteer, but it's online, quite seamless, and we support our volunteers through that. When that comes back, we will then share the opportunities that we have available, and you can select as many or as few as you want to, depending on what your availability and interest might be. And our volunteering opportunities take place throughout the year on an ongoing basis. So there's lots of opportunities for you to sign up, and really under no obligation. So we understand people are busy, workflows can change, holidays, etc. So you can select whatever opportunities align with you at the time. And then we will support you beforehand, as I said, making sure you're briefed. Our lovely volunteer coordinator will make sure you have everything that you need, and then you take part. And we are there as well, present throughout the activities. And something that's really important to us is feeding back to our volunteers in terms of the difference that their support has made. And we receive that in volume from our young people. We evaluate everything, but the young people are really clear about the difference that our volunteers have made to their journey. So we collate that and then provide that back to the volunteers immediately and over the long term, so you can see the difference that your support is making. And then beyond that, that will continue for as long as you want to be a part of the work that we do. And we'd absolutely love to have you. And I think just to sort of humanize this, I suppose for us, like, we can all recognize or remember, some of us, it seemed a long time ago now, but when we were first starting out, those people that believed in us, encouraged us, gave us those insights or opened doors for us, and the difference that made. And really, by volunteering with Making the Leap, you would be doing just that for a young person starting out. So we would really love to have all of you. So please do get in touch if you'd like to get involved with us. Back to you, Dom.
Nothing to add for me. Thank you.
Thank you both. That's brilliant.
Lovely. Yeah, thank you so much. And I know that Dom's got some pretty ambitious volunteer targets for the industry. So come on, guys, register.
I've just registered myself. So,
good.
So
thanks, Matt.
Thank you so much to everyone who
presentation.
joined. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great. So yeah, back to you, Gemma.
Thank you, guys. That was a really, really good session. Lots of stuff covered there. So really interesting, particularly for us that are a little bit older. Been around for a while, right? like you laughing there, Matt. Yeah, so really good session. Thanks everybody. I'm conscious of time. Obviously the recording's on there, so if you can share with people that haven't been around due to holiday, etc., it will be available later this week, I think, Sabrina, it should be. And the next session that we've got is Monday the 21st of September, which will actually be about working in mortgages and how we can make a difference. So if you can encourage everyone in your businesses to get involved and listen in. And thanks everyone, and we will see you in a month.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.